Hey everyone, hope you're having a good evening so far. My name is Kate Watts. I'm registered dietitian nutritionist here at Cone Health with the Live Life Well Employee Wellbeing team. So thanks for joining us for our virtual cooking class. I'm happy to introduce our guest chef, Miss Natalie Hunt. She's going to be preparing a really easy and flavorful dish for us. That kind of reflects basically the go-to type of meal for Nap Packs, her business, which you can check out at natpacks.com. So if you guys have any questions or comments as we go along, please type those in the chat box, any food or nutrition questions at all. And other than that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Natalie.
Thank you, Kate. It's always exciting to be back here at the Med Center Greensboro. And today we're going to be doing the seared sirloin, roasted asparagus, and avocado salad. It's a whole mouthful, but it's got tons of flavor. It's really, really fresh and should be prepared in about under 30 minutes with some pretty minimal prep. So thank you all so much for joining. As Kate said, I'm Natalie with Nap Packs, and I'm excited to be here leading this class tonight. So to get started, we're going to start with 2 cups of water in a medium-sized stock pot with a lid, and we're going to go to a medium-high heat to create a roaring boil. So pretty simple. Quinoa is one of my favorite carbs to cook with because it is plant-based, it's not processed, it's high in protein, and it's very versatile. So from a glucose insulin perspective, it is a very low glycemic index food. And so you can enjoy quinoa without creating a big blood sugar spike. And it's really, really versatile. So we're going to let this water come up to a boil. And we're going to go ahead and preheat our oven to 375. So next up, we're going to be using some local asparagus. Asparagus season is kind of coming to an end, but these are really delicious from Guilford County. So I'm excited to be featuring them. They're a great way to get in a ton of vitamins and nutrients. And we're just going to cut this. Typically with asparagus, you'll see kind of the bend point. And so what you want to do is cut past that bend point, and we're just going to cut this into 2-inch sections. We're going to add it to a roasting dish with some olive oil and a little bit of salt. Since this is going on a salad, I want those nice bite-sized pieces. If I was serving this just on a as a dish or as a side, I would leave those really pretty long asparagus stems. But since we're putting this into a salad, we're going to cut it into bite-sized pieces and throw this into our roasting pan. If you don't like asparagus, or asparagus isn't in season or readily available, or let's just say it doesn't look fresh, a great alternative in this recipe would either be snap peas, green beans, or broccoli. So here we're going to add just a drizzle of olive oil and just a tiny touch of salt. You can certainly salt at the end. That is up to you. That is your preference. But we'll go ahead and add a little bit in, and I'm just going to toss this. So next up, while we're waiting for this water to boil, we're going to go ahead and make the dressing. If any of you have been in I'm gonna move this pot to a bigger eye. That will help speed up that boiling process. So any of you that have done my classes before know that a lot of times we feature kind of a fresh dressing or a marinade, and I love to use these mason jars with the wide mouth because you're able to just add all of your ingredients in here. You can juice a lime or a lemon directly into the mason jar, and then you have a fresh dressing that you can use for up to 7 to 14 days, depending upon the ingredient. So for this one, I went ahead and added in 1 tablespoon of garlic. We're also going to add in 1/4 cup of olive oil. I really love this olive oil dispenser because it does help measure the portions, and then also you're not kind of fumbling around with a really large container that's cumbersome to pour. So I love these. They're available on Amazon. They're super affordable, and they're a great staple for if you're trying to watch how much oil you are using. So for this, we went ahead and did 1/4 cup of olive oil. And we're going to add the zest and the juice of 1 lime. So does anybody know my secret about juicing citrus? So typically before you juice it, you always want to take the palm of your hand and just do a simple little roll with just a slight pressure. That'll help kind of 1, warm the fruit up, and 2, make it easier to juice when that time comes. So here I have a microplane. You could also use a small side of a cheese grater. If you don't have a microplane, that's totally okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and zest my lime, and then we'll add that into the olive oil and garlic. So if you guys have any questions or I lose you during this process, please do not hesitate to use the chat box to reach out. I'm not able to answer questions, but I do have people here that are watching that chat and can help with any questions that you might have. Right. So zesting that lime produced about a tablespoon of zest. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that in. It looks like my water is up to a boil, so I'm going to kind of pause here for just a second and go ahead and add my quinoa. So the quinoa takes about 12 minutes to cook. It's pretty fast, but it's super versatile. So if I'm ever needing a carb, this is typically my go-to. I like the tricolor quinoa because it has a really rich and nutty flavor. And so with 2 cups of water, your ratio is always 2 to 1. So with 2 cups of water, we're going to do 1 cup of quinoa. We're going to get that in, and we're going to cover it and turn the heat down. We'll give that just a tiny stir to make sure it's in. And I will reduce that heat to like a low medium. And we'll go ahead and cover. Now, back to our dressing. So I've zested the lime. I hope everybody is like following along with me. Again, if you have questions, feel free to use that chat box. So next we're going to juice this lime. So I have a handy dandy juicer. These are also great. You can find them on Amazon. A lot of times they're easily available, and local stores as well. But we're just gonna cut this lime in half, and always fruit side down, skin side up. That helps get the most juice out of it, and then directly into the mason jar. Again, fruit side down, skin side up, and directly into the mason jar. Next up, we're going to add in the fresh parsley and the fresh cilantro. So here I have cilantro and parsley. This is flat Italian parsley. You can use a curly parsley. They have a very similar flavor, but the leaves just look a little bit different. So for this, we're aiming for about 4 tablespoons of finely chopped. If you would like, you could always buy the pre-chopped in the store. It comes in the little containers. But I love the freshness, and then also I try to find ways to use fresh herbs throughout the week. So I'm going to go ahead and just finely chop this, and we'll add it in. So that looks like plenty to me. I always start on the leafy side. We don't really need the stem pieces, and then I'll just go back through until we have a nice fine chop. The great thing about this is even though we are finely chopping an herb, we don't have to be an expert chef. Really, we just want to dice that up so that it can easily be incorporated into our olive oil and our citrus. So set that back aside and add in our parsley. So again, we do not need the whole bundle. So there'll be some extra left over that you can use hopefully within the next couple of days. Maybe just a sprig or two more. If you would like for the herbs to be a little bit finer, you could always put this into a food processor, but for a really fresh and easy dressing or marinade, the herbs do not have to be super finely chopped. Plus, we're going to be pouring this over greens with avocados, so it will incorporate very, very well. Right, so I'm going to check on the quinoa. I'm going to give it a little stir, and I'm going to reduce the heat even more. And return to cover. Honestly, chopping the herbs is probably the most time-consuming thing that we'll be doing this evening. One of the great things about using the flank steak or a skirt steak, it will cook really fast. And so this whole process, if you made this ahead of time, had it pre-made, should be a really simple, really fresh dinner that you can throw together on the fly. If you like a little bit more heat, you could always add in a little chopped jalapenos, some dry red pepper, or even some paprika. The great thing about preparing it in this container is I'm able to just put the lid on it, give it a shake, and then when we're done for the evening, I can pop it into the refrigerator and have it for the next couple of days. Great. So next up, we're going to go ahead and prepare our avocado and tomato and red onion. All of those items are optional. You can always swap those out. However, I love avocado and I love tomato, and so those go really, really well with the parsley and cilantro dressing and the quinoa. So we'll go ahead and get those prepared, and then pretty much all that's left is waiting for the quinoa, our asparagus, and searing our steak. So I'm going to use some Roma tomatoes. These are probably my favorite. A lot of times with some of your bigger tomatoes, they can be kind of underripe or overripe, and these I find that they are nice and sweet and typically very have a great texture and not very grainy. They're pretty. So here I'm just doing little round sections, and then we're going to go ahead and cut it into fours. I am going to take a peek at my asparagus. They look great. Every oven is different, and sometimes here at the test kitchen, I like to just make sure I'm keeping my eye on everything. I would hate to burn something right in the middle of a class and then have a big mess. So it's always good if you have a stopping point just to take a step back and kind of check on all of your different tasks at hand. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut up to another tomato. All right, so that is ready. I also have an avocado. So avocados are one of those things kind of like tomatoes. You have to buy them and time them just right. So usually I'll pick up avocados a couple days before I really truly need them, so that I will have one that's not too firm and not too soft. So this one is probably about perfect. And one of the ways that I can tell is typically the end will be nice and soft, but still the sides are fairly firm. By fairly firm, you can push them in, but it's not squishy. So hopefully this one is spot on. I think that looks pretty good. So we're gonna just go ahead and remove the core. Removing the core is one of those things where I've seen quite a few people actually cut themselves in that process. Just be really careful. Avocados are of course very slick. So just take your time. To cut this or slice this, I'm gonna leave it in the skin and then just take my knife very gently. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to cut a ripe avocado. I could probably do it with a spoon or even the back side of a spoon. So we're just going to cut little slits through this avocado from the top to the bottom. Being sure not to go through the skin. Again, that doesn't need a ton of pressure. And then it will be ready to go on top of our salad. Underripe and overripe avocados are probably one of the most frustrating things. You have this dish and you want to add avocado to it, and then you get your avocado and either your avocado is super, super underripe, or it's kind of gotten squishy. And so having perfectly ripe avocados makes me very happy. All right, so I'm going to check on the quinoa once again. We should be coming up very closely on that 12-minute mark. This looks really good. And I'm also going to take another peek at the asparagus. Some people like their asparagus really roasted to where it kind of develops color. Some people like still their asparagus to have some of the firmness. Of course, you can cook that to your discretion. You could also throw the asparagus in an air fryer or even saute it in the pan. So there are some options. If you don't feel like using the oven and heating up the whole house, you could very easily toss it in the pan, give it a quick little sear, and set it aside. So our asparagus is almost done. I definitely don't want to overcook it, and I definitely don't want it too firm. And so a couple more minutes and that'll be ready as well. How's everybody doing? Anybody cooking along with us? Does anyone have any questions about the recipe or the ingredients or nutrition in general? Welcome, yay. Thank you, Sonia. It's so nice to have people cooking along with us. And then I know a lot of people that are cooking along with us are using that chat feature. They have a setup on the side and are listening while completing the steps. And so it's always nice to kind of be able to say hey to the people that are here with us. So thank you so much. I know a couple of NatPack clients are on tonight, and then a couple of people through Cone Health as well. And then it's always just great to have these opportunities to get together, to share a really healthy recipe, and of course, eat something really yummy. So the biggest reason that we do this is to provide resources for the community. And so a lot of times we can get really burned out on eating the same things, or we're looking for healthy recipes to nourish our body. And so getting to do these teaching classes is kind of a little spark of inspiration for people who are getting burnt out or looking for something really yummy and healthy. So I think that the tonight's steak and asparagus salad is going to be phenomenal. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my asparagus. And our quinoa is almost done. I'm going to check that as well. All right. So a lot of people are kind of unfamiliar with quinoa. A great alternative in this recipe would be brown rice. You could always add rice or even a bean, a black bean, garbanzo bean, or a kidney bean would be a great alternative in this recipe if you are avoiding quinoa or not really a fan. Orzo would also be a great option. There is a gluten-free orzo, which is very similar to a pasta, a very tiny, small pasta. That's a great staple for these types of recipes. It's really, really versatile, and it's got a ton of flavor. So got a little bit more water for my quinoa to absorb. So quinoa and rice cook a lot alike, where at the end we're using the heat and the steam to actually cook the quinoa. And so typically you can tell when it's done, it'll be nice and fluffy and all the water will be absorbed. So we've got a couple more minutes on that. What we're going to do next is our flank steak. So I'm going to be using a sliced flank steak, but if your flank steak is not sliced already, I'll be glad to kind of lead you through that. So a lot of people feel like steak is one of those things that they should avoid. There's a lot of different recommendations around red meat. However, in moderation, for the normal person, it can be a great option. And so here with the flank steak, you're able to get about 2.5 pounds for $13, and that's Publix prices. So it's really flank steak is an affordable option. That's just a great change from traditional chicken or shrimp. So I know a lot of people, they get kind of burned out. They're like, I'm trying my best to be healthy, but I'm kind of burnt out on chicken and I need some other alternatives. Flank steak is a great option because it does have a lot of flavor and it's still very affordable. So we're going to be using flank steak. Some other alternatives for this recipe would be chicken, shrimp. You can even do jackfruit or tofu if you need an all plant-based meal. So typically with flank steak, what you're going to do is rinse it and pat it dry. And then when you have the flank steak, you're going to cut against the grain. So you're going to make cut away from your body, and the grain of the meat will be going this way. So you're going to cut against that in the opposite direction. That's going to give you the best piece or the best bite for that cut of meat. So for this one, I'll spare y'all all the gory raw meat details, but you will cut against the grain. That makes sense? That's always a tricky one. People are like, I don't know how to cut this. It's not cut. You can always back cut. Or if you're in the store and you would like for them to cut it, a lot of places will cut it for you. Or just remember, if the lines of the meat are going this way, you want to cut it against that line. So for this, quinoa looks good. So for the quinoa, we are going to stir in 1 tablespoon of garlic, 1 tablespoon of onion. Sorry, 1 teaspoon of garlic, 1 teaspoon of onion, and add in a little drizzle of olive oil. The olive oil is just there to help it stick, and this is just to create a little bit more flavor in that. So by drizzle, that's about 1 teaspoon. How's everyone doing? So to cook a steak like this, we're going to go hot, fast, or high, hot, and fast. So we really do not want to overcook this. It is very thin, and it is typically a little bit more of a tougher meat. So by cooking it high and quick, we're able to preserve that kind of preserve the texture of the meat and not overcook it and turn it into like shoe leather or something. So I'm going to start by heating my pan on like a medium-high heat. There we go. I am going to add in a little drizzle of olive oil. I get a lot of questions about oils. The only thing that I use is olive oil. Occasionally I will use a avocado oil that's in a spray bottle. Typically that's for if I'm on a grill outside where I really kind of want to coat those racks without loading it down with the olive oil. But typically olive oil is the only thing that I use. And it's the only thing that we use at Nat Packs. And one of the reasons why some of the other alternative oils can cause digestion issues, that can increase the likelihood for inflammation, for things like IBS, Also, too, olive oil is just a really great versatile product. So not only can I use it to saute the steak, but we can use it to make the dressing. And so that is my go-to. So for this steak, all I'm going to do, it really doesn't need a ton, is I'm going to give it a little sprinkle of pepper and a little sprinkle of garlic. Just a tiny bit of olive oil, and then I'm going to toss this around. All right, here comes the fun part. So our asparagus is done, our quinoa is done, our avocado and tomatoes are cut. So really the only thing that we have left is to cook this steak. And that is a pretty quick process with this type of cut. Because the dressing is going to be providing a lot of the seasoning, we don't have to do a ton to this meat. However, we could very easily use that dressing and marinate the meat. All right, so now I have made a thin little layer of steak across the pan, and we're gonna let that cook about 2 minutes on this side before I rotate. So I think the sheet says 3 to 4, and then flip for another 3 to 4. However, this is the thing where you can definitely use your judgment and cook to your preference. Some people like a more well-cooked steak, and that's totally fine, but I'm not one of those people. So I'm definitely not going to overcook this, but I am going to add just a tiny bit more garlic. So while it's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and assemble our greens, our quinoa, and our asparagus, along with the tomatoes and avocados that we've cut. So if you've been on any of my other classes, you know that this is my favorite go-to green. It holds up really, really well, and I feel like it's very fresh. Some greens that I bought, they will wilt in a day or two. I will say that this brand I found does hold up really, really well. So also too, we're in that local season for fresh greens. So be sure to check out your farmer's market and any of the local farms that may be selling greens or microgreens. Now's the time of year to start grabbing those items locally. All right. But that one is my favorite. So that is the super greens. It's washed 3 times. I do feel like there's a ton of quality with that product. And it has a nice variety of Swiss chard, spinach, arugula, and baby bok choy, which just adds like a great texture. So tomatoes are on. Now I'm going to go ahead and flip our steak. It has started to develop a nice color. It really shouldn't need much more time. So by the time I get done assembling those salads, everything should be ready to go. So one of the things I'm always thinking about, whether or not I'm preparing a meal here at Cone, I'm preparing a meal at home, or I'm working on the weekly menu for my Knappack clients, is variety. And so not only do I want to incorporate as many colors as possible, but I also want to incorporate texture into the meals. It makes it more interesting and satisfying. So here we've got a green item with our asparagus. We've got red. So we're getting a ton of different vitamins and minerals. And then also it's really satisfying. And so by adding the quinoa in the steak, we're adding in a type of carbohydrate, a really great high quality protein and fat. And then also topping it with the avocado and the dressing, which are additional sources of really clean, high quality fat. So by adding in that variety and thinking about those different pieces as part of a well-balanced meal, not only are you going to get something that's very satisfying, but you're also going to get something that's highly nourishing. Let's go ahead and add our asparagus. And our quinoa. So a great thing to do with the quinoa is to cook it ahead of time and to cool it. But since we're adding warm asparagus and we're adding warm quinoa, we are going to get some wilt on these greens, which to me, I love. Some people would rather have those items cold, and that's completely, again, another preference item. I love the warmth of the quinoa. But anything that's extra or left over, you can certainly put in a container and store for up to 7 days in the refrigerator. All right. I think we're ready. Maybe just one more second for a tiny bit more color. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off for our steak. One little call. Time to add the avocado. And now for the final ingredient, our steak. And our dressing. I'm really excited about this meal. Not only does it smell great, but I know it has a ton of flavor. And it's got a lot of things that are really high quality and very, very clean. And so again, you know, that was under 40 minutes, and I kind of took my time walking through some of the steps with you guys. So this is an easy recreate at home. Again, if you're not into red meat or you hit your limit for red meat for the week, you could always do shrimp. You could always do chicken, and walk away with a really delicious and yummy dish with a ton of color. Does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you all so much for joining me. If you have any questions or need any assistance, if you'd like more fresh recipes, definitely go follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. If you need healthy meals on a regular basis, NAPACS does serve everywhere from North Raleigh to High Point. So we are glad to provide a really great, clean, healthy, and convenient meal for you. But thank you so much for joining in. I look forward to sharing it with you again soon. Bye.